Let's bring them in.
So, this is our New Year's edition of SANDCAST. Happy New Year's, everyone. Welcome back to the show for the first time in 2020.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Hey.
And our first guest of the new year is one of the greatest players of all time. We're stoked to have in the house Sinjin Smith.
Good to be here.
Good to have you in here. Glad you found the place.
Yeah,
Parking
right.
can be a little troublesome.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Good to have you here. How are things? Normally it's how's off season, but you're not playing 30 tournaments a year anymore.
No. Yeah, there really wasn't an off season, but yeah, now it's kind of a bummer not to see, tournaments going, places, to go and watch and play and the whole thing. But yeah, it's for me, I'm still involved in the sport at a bunch of different levels, with up and down the coast with camps and things and club on the beach and then also I'm involved in licensing. I don't know how much I told you before, but with King of the Beach and Queen of the Beach and King of the Court and Queen of the Court,
Right.
the company I work with, Miramar Brands, owns those brands, and I'm working to license those brands for various things.
Cool.
Huh.
So King of the Court, when the event was here, I licensed the name to them so they could use it for their
Awesome.
events.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I remember Hagen had mentioned kind of stuff similar to that, but I didn't really know what it meant really.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
So
we're
you're
hoping
busy.
they come back. They were all fired up, the guys from Netherlands,
They were all fired up.
to hoping it would become an Olympic sport. I like the format, by the way. I was a little skeptical at first, but when I went down to the event and saw it, very exciting. Very fast paced.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get involved in a match and you see one team against another, and maybe it's not interesting to you. But here, 5 teams, you're going to be interested in one of those teams at the very
Right.
least, if not just the game itself and how quick it goes and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
Do you think it would be too hard to follow or understand for kind of a casual viewer? If someone saw it for the first time, I
Yep.
feel like it'd be wildly confusing.
No, they pick a team. They see the scoreboard. Every team's up on the
If you can
scoreboard.
see the scoreboard, I
Okay.
feel
Yeah.
like you can figure it
Yeah,
out.
and you can follow the team. Oh, they're serving now. Let's see if they win the rally. It's easy to see if they win the rally or not because they go to the other side. If they lose, they're
Yeah.
back in line again. So I don't think it's that hard to follow. I mean, you can figure it out very quickly, even for a novice in the sport. I think, again, I was pleasantly surprised, and I've been around the sport a long time. Anything new, it's I don't know, but I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Says
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah. Where do you stand on the side out versus rally scoring? I know that's kind of a hard line in the sand sometimes.
It's weird when you play, 20 years. You're the vast majority of your career one way, and then it switches. But I understood why it happened, and you make an adjustment, and then it's still volleyball. It's just you've got to teach yourself, a little different. In the old rules, you could kind of start slow and then catch up. Now you can't do that. You have to start out right out of the gate, and you can't mess around. You give up a couple points, and that could be the whole game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was I'm sure you probably had some pretty big comebacks in side out scoring.
It was, I don't remember specifically, but I knew this. If a team got to, in a game to 15, if they got to 14 before us, scoring that last point for that other team was really, really difficult. Really difficult. Because we were going to side out every single time, and then eventually we'd score.
Yeah.
So this is Randy and I.
Right.
Yeah.
Or before that, it was Karch and I, but it was Randy and I for all those years.
Right.
But it was the same thing with Karch. And, we played right out of UCLA in 1979. He was a freshman. I was a senior. We won the NCAA championships. We went undefeated that year. And then we went right to the beach. And it was pretty easy playing with him.
Yeah.
We did it for a few years, and then we both went to the national team, and then I left the national team. He stayed on the national team, and he had to miss some tournaments, so I was playing with different people, and then I ended up accidentally playing with Randy, and we had, success right off the bat. First term we played in, we won. And that was okay for the rest of the season. Karch would come back. I go, Randy, I'm going to play with Karch. And he didn't like it, but he understood. Mm-hmm. And then the next year he said, you play with me the whole time or I'm going to find somebody else. And it made sense because Karch could only play in a handful of events. So that's how Randy and I got together, and we stayed together from that point on.
Yeah. You said you kind of accidentally found Randy, but how does one accidentally find like a 6'5", like ridiculous athlete? Like I'm sure he had to have been pretty.
Well, he was out there and he was playing with Fishburne at the time, who was one of the best players, and we were competing against him. And really tough. They never won a tournament because we were there,
Right.
and then he was still playing with Fishburne when Karch went away, and I played with my brother. I played with a few other guys, and then Fishburne was gone for one tournament, and Randy and I, let's play.
Right. Okay.
So we played and did well.
Tough one to miss, Andy.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
It wasn't good for him.
We had Mike Dodd in a couple weeks ago, and he was telling us about kind of just the weird relationship between the beach guys. You mentioned that you were on the national team, left the national team. You mentioned just kind of the strange relationship the Southern California beach guys had with Doug Beal and the more Midwest.
He had
team.
great things to say about your passing.
He did.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But
Well, just to elaborate on that, I mean, most people don't know the four of us, Hav, Dodd, Randy, and me, were all on the national team at one point. Mm-hmm. And then at one point we were all off the national team. And we were all playing on the beach. So, and there's a lot of stories related to that too. I went to the national team in 1979 when it was back in Ohio, in Dayton, Ohio. And that was right after the tournament, May 7th, got on a plane, took off and started training to go and try and qualify for 1980. And the whole time we were there, we were going, this makes no sense to have the program back in Ohio. All the players are out in Southern California at that time. It's different today, but at that time, they were all out here. And nobody would go back there. It just so happens that Pat Powers, Dusty Dvorak, myself, Tim Hovland, and some other guys, right after that season, indoor season, we went back to play on the national team. So we gave them a really good shot to qualify. And then, but along the way, we go, this makes no sense to be back here. Why are we here?
Right.
So eventually, right after the 80 Olympics, they moved the program out to San Diego. And, and then all the guys from Southern California, from all the, from Pepperdine, UCLA, USC, all the different colleges, all the guys would come and join the national team. And I just, as a little aside, we would train from 8 to 12 in the morning, with the team. And then Karch and I would go down to the beach at South Mission Beach, and we'd put on weight belts, and then we'd play volleyball, all afternoon.
With
and then there were
Weight
belts
belts,
at that
okay.
time, 12-pounders. And then so we play all afternoon, and then we come back and we lift weights, and we do that every day. And we couldn't. The coaches couldn't know, otherwise they'd freak out. But we couldn't get enough volleyball. I mean, it didn't matter, indoor, outdoor, it didn't matter. We just wanted to play, so it was pretty awesome.
That I can't imagine because like so many people. Do you laugh when a lot of the guys now play 2 hours a day and a couple hours, and then they're like, oh, I'm burned out. When you guys were going.
No, I don't
hard.
laugh, but yeah, it doesn't. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, we would play all day, every day. I mean, in the 70s and early 80s, there weren't that many tournaments, so
Right.
7 days a week we'd be playing. If there was a tournament, you drive to it, you play for 2 days, you come back and you'd start playing again on Monday, all week long, all day long, and you get on center court. You'd want to get on the number one court, and you'd play and win and stay on court all day long, all day. 8 hours
How many
or more.
players would come up and challenge you guys? It seems so different than these days. I feel like no one would show up to challenge us if we did
just
that,
a
right?
different. I feel like it's a different environment because everyone has their set training courts.
Yeah.
Well,
It's so
imagine
different.
all those guys that set up matches if they all went to Sereno or Manhattan Beach.
Right.
All of them,
Right.
or Santa Barbara.
Right.
You know, there'd be a group and there'd be people waiting to get on that center court. You would never, I mean, you were bummed out if you were like third in line to get on the court.
Right.
You'd try to get on the court, you know, and stay on the court all day long. And there was always the second court where you could play, but you wanted to be on the first court.
Right.
So you compete all day long.
Yeah, that's a lot different than nowadays.
Yeah.
Now it's like you set up practice to go compete with a specific team at a specific time.
Yeah, and maybe you play 2 matches, right? In a training session, or maybe no matches. I don't know.
We usually you'll drill and do like set drills, competition drills, and then 1 match.
Yeah.
Usually. I don't think anyone plays 2 matches.
Yeah.
Well, you'd never last in one of our tournaments. In 2 days, there'd be over 64 teams in the bigger tournaments.
Right.
And it was 2 out of 3.
Oh, yeah.
Old scoring. Losers bracket was 1 to 15, old scoring. So, you know, you were going to play a whole bunch of hours.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of hours. Not, you know, I mean, you guys don't even play 4 matches in a day, right?
The qualifiers
you can,
I played 4.
Yeah, you can, but in the regular tournament you wouldn't.
Right.
I mean, unless it rained or something happened, you'd have to push it in. I mean, 64 team, double elimination. You know, you figure out how many games you would play, right?
Yeah.
And if you go into the losers, you know, it's 1 game to 15, but it's still gnarly. You're playing many more games.
Yeah, you're kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so different.
And they didn't water the courts.
Good.
Right, yeah.
And you know, if you wore socks, you know, people kind of go, pfft, you know?
Yeah. Automatically off court 1.
Yeah, it was a lot different. But the changes to the game, I don't think hurt the game. I mean, you know, the smaller court I think is good for the game. I played on the smaller court, and I knew it was harder to side out, which is exactly what we wanted to accomplish when we you know, made the rule, is to make it more interesting for the fans, and ultimately it's more interesting for the players too, because they play more volleyball. You know, if you can't put it away as easily, that means somebody on the other side is bringing it up or blocking it back, or you know, you have another chance for the ball to go over the net, and that's ultimately what you want. You want to see the ball go over the net.
Right.
I mean, I made a living at having nobody touch the ball.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I guess you get used to that as a fan, and you expect to see it, but you know, you're not bringing in new fans to watch, you know, a guy pass that hit and put the ball away every single time.
And you're having to swing at the block, like, or really close to it to actually get a hit down. So now you're going to see bigger blocks as well. Right?
Yeah, which is fine. Yeah, I don't know how many players like to get blocked. So you try to avoid the block, right?
Right, yeah.
So if you're a digger, you go to the place where the blocker isn't blocking, right? Or you track down balls that are shot. I mean, that's just what you do. You know, bigger players, great. They still have to be able to pass and set, right?
Totally.
And great, they take away more area, but that means you should see more digs too, or more blocks.
Right.
Unless the offensive guy just has no brains and just wants to hit it hard into the block.
Right, yeah.
You know,
I love how one of my favorite things of when I like played with Hagen, and you would kind of give advice when like Hagen like asked for it, is how simple you made how simple you made the game, that it's really easy to overcomplicate. I just remember we were playing I think Troy and Chase, and you were like, well, this guy needs a huge approach. I was like, so why don't you just short serve him every ball? And that was like mind blowing to me.
Well, it's funny. Short serves, I think, are one of the things that should be used way more than they are. I mean, everyone wants the big serve, right? You know, and they're great. If you're feeling it, big serve, awesome. But if you want to take the guy out of their normal offense, give them a short serve.
It's true.
They move up a step or two, and then their approach is different. No matter what happens, their approach is going to be different. Even if they're good at a 1 step and up, it's still going to be different than if it's 3 or 4 steps to come up and hit.
Right.
So if you can change what they like to do normally, you're going to have a better shot at picking balls up.
Right.
Did you? So I mean, Dad coached Rosie and Jake for a couple quads. Did you ever think about getting a team, or did you? I don't even know if you got into coaching like that.
No, I mean I would help guys if they asked, but you know, I didn't have the time to really stick with the team and train with them and then travel with them and do the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if anyone asked me, it didn't matter. I would say, yeah, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I'd watch them and give them a little input.
Yeah. Do you still get out there every now and then?
When I have to, certain people ask me to play, or there's an event of some sort, and I'll go out and do something. I try not to do anything more than just pass.
Yeah.
Because the jumping thing doesn't work anymore. And you know what happens when your brain remembers what your body used to be able to do?
You hurt that night.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the jumping to Hagen.
Yeah, right.
It's up pretty good.
Yeah.
But you've been really heavily involved in the FIVB. I mean, the game at every level, and you're still. I see you on tour every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of made you want to get into that side of things?
When I'll take you back to the '80s.
Well, your guys' generation is like seemed to be a lot more involved. Like the players were like really a part of what happened in the tours, and like you guys ran the tour at one point.
Yeah,
I understand, right?
yeah.
You're gonna have to.
So, on the international, well, we could start with the professional side of the sport, where we were playing up and down the coast, and there was no sponsors, nothing, and everything. Yeah, and then a promoter saw what was going on, and they put some money in, and we had some professional events. We didn't have anything to do with that. And then, I'm trying to make it a shorter story because it could go forever.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Leonard Armato came to us and said, hey, you guys can own your sport. You guys, the players. And we're going, huh? And he said, I'll help you do it. We'll form an organization, and we'll have the sponsors deal directly with the organization, and, so on and so forth. And we said, great. So he did that. He did it for us, basically. And that was the start of the AVP. And then we controlled kind of everything.
Right.
We went out and, helped get new sponsors, dealt with the television, and I played a pretty good role with all of that.
Right.
And then I was invited to play in Brazil in this international event in 1980, I think it was 86. And Pat Powers and I went down with Nina Matthews and Linda Handley.
I love Nina Matthews.
And we played 2-on-2 girls, 2-on-2 guys, and then 4-on-4 mixed against the Brazilian, against their indoor stars, their big time stars.
Right.
You know how Brazil is with their indoor stars. Imagine there weren't any beach stars yet.
Right.
They were the indoor stars. So we played. It was a huge success. We played in 2 different cities, in Rio and then in somewhere else. And the crowds were insane. The people were crazy. I don't know about so much about us, but at least for the indoor stars, and we needed protection.
Wow.
I mean, it was gnarly, but it was such a huge success. The promoter of those events, who was a guy who went to USC, it was a tennis player, Fernando von Ortsen. He and I went to the FIVB and said, "Hey, let's do an international, event, sanctioned by the FIVB, a World Championship." So the next year, we did a World Championships, and then did that for several years. I ended up playing with Randy in the next one, and we had a lot of success there, and then that's how the World Tour started. It started in Brazil, a few events in Brazil, and then Italy, and then different countries got involved, and more teams came from around the world, and the FIVB saw what was happening, and it was a good thing. And then the president of the FIVB, Ruben Acosta, was good friends with Juan Antonio Samaranch from the IOC, the president. And, he had this relationship, and he would take me with him to talk to other IOC members. And we had an event alongside of the 92 Olympics in Barcelona, a beach event, to showcase the sport for the IOC. And that's the event. Randy and I were sanctioned $70,000 by the AVP for going and playing in that event.
No way.
And we had promised 2 years ahead of time to go to the event to, to showcase beach volleyball for the IOC to try to get the sport into the Olympics.
70 grand.
Yeah. Well, we happen to win that amount of money.
Oh, there you go.
But they kept us from playing in the biggest events of the season, the AVP. And these are the same guys that were our opponents in every event. Were sanctioning us.
Right.
Kind of weird thing, huh?
That's really weird.
So they kept us from playing in events. So events that we would win most of the time, we weren't there. Huh. But from that, the sport became an Olympic sport. And so it was all worthwhile in the end for us. For sure. For them, they could care less, I'm sure. And in fact, they said, no, it'll never be an Olympic sport. You're just blowing in the wind.
Right.
And so it became an Olympic sport. And it was awesome.
Wow. Well, thank you.
There's a lot more along the way that happened. Sure. If you want to dive into it another time, we can do that.
We can have you on as much as you'll come.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, make notes and have the questions, and I can go.
All right.
What when you were pushing for or helping the FIVB kind of get beach internationally.
Yep.
What was the main motivation? Because that was when the AVP was, really on the up and up, and so because if you talk to Hav, he's like, well, why would I go to Brazil to play an event against these indoor guys who can't play beach when I could stay here?
But he did.
Money.
He did. and he loves Brazil. I mean, when you have an opportunity to go play in another country, it's how great is it? And those, even though in the mid '80s, the Brazilian indoor players weren't as seasoned on the beach as we were, they were still very competitive and tremendous volleyball athletes. Tremendous. So it's not like we went over there and it was a cakewalk. No, by no means.
Right.
But after a few years, they were right there. And then they were, it took a little while, but then players started to play just on the beach. They would grow up playing indoors, but they would make the transition and play beach once there was a place to play. And then, we were so good because we had a tour. We had a place to play and compete. Otherwise, we'd be playing down at our local beach. But when you have that tour and you can make money and travel around and prepare for events, so you're playing a lot and competing, you have an advantage over any country that's not competing regularly. But Brazil very quickly figured it out, and they started a tour, a national tour. They're competing, and then more and more players developed, and then they became, for a while, the best country in the world.
Speaking of Brazilians, where does Jose Loyola fall into this story?
As a Brazilian or American?
He's my coach now. Well, Brazilian, because he was like, from what I understand, it seems like he was like that young kid that just was like, let me take a crack at these Americans.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that fell in the timeline of your career.
He came a little later.
Okay.
We didn't. I think we competed a little bit with him internationally, not a ton. But interesting story, Manuel, who
Similar time they came out.
Yeah, well,
together.
So in probably '89, somewhere around there, we would always go in our winter time in February, for the big event.
Right.
And it's right in the middle of their summer, and they're all, they're perfect shape, everything else, and we come over, we're completely white, and we'll try and get a couple games in before we start the tournament the next day. And we go out, Randy and I, and we, you don't want to play against good teams, right? So they go, play against this kid and his partner, and it's Emmanuel, and he's probably 17 maybe. He's skinny anyway, but imagine 17, right?
Totally.
This skinny kid, and after the first two plays, Randy and I look at each other and go, oh no, we're screwed, and we can't lose.
Yeah.
You can't, because we were.
They'll blow it up.
We were the kings of Rio.
Right.
Right, and everybody expected us to come down and win, and then we're just messing around, and here they throw this kid out against us, and we can't lose. You just can't.
Yeah.
And we eventually won that game, but it was everything we could do to compete and win, and that was the day before, and it was just a warm up game. It was crazy. Yeah. I don't know where was I going with that?
It was Manuel and then Jose.
Oh, so Manuel, he became, as you know, probably the greatest player, in our era.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, with all his success in Brazil and internationally and in the Olympic Games. I mean, just unbelievable, incredible. He could probably compete at that level today. You know, I'm not sure why he retired, but he was tremendous. It seemed like he never got hurt. He just jumped effortlessly, and he had all the skills.
He seemed like he was so light on the sand.
Yeah.
Like he was almost like tiptoeing around.
Yeah.
He'd jump
Yeah.
and float.
Yeah.
Played like.
Oh, so Loyola. We started this with Loyola. So Loyola, you know, they played together, right? And they were really, really good. And that was kind of at the end of my career. And Loyola was just, he was scary. I mean, he could jump. Imagine Manuel and Loyola, two jumpers, right? And they could do everything. They were a scary, scary team. And jump serving as a jump serving team too, ridiculous.
Especially on that big court.
A big court, a game to 15, they would score, you know, at least half of their points on just the serve.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Wow.
I'm not sure how great that was either for the game, you know. And when you can win,
Right.
you know.
I'm just ripping aces.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
What was it that made you and Randy such a good team? Because when you look at it on paper, you know, you have, I don't know how tall are you? Maybe 6'2"?
6'3".
6'3"?
He's
And Randy's like 6'5".
he's maybe 6'5",
Okay.
maybe.
So like not like a huge team.
Yeah, but he
Back then,
was a
bigger.
big 6'5".
He's a huge dude.
Big 6'5". I mean, he jumped really well for someone his size, and he was, you know, he had played so much volleyball growing up
Right.
that, you know, he had a sense for the game that not many people had.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, of course, he had incredible hands. You know, at the time, probably the best hands on the beach. He could set any ball from anywhere, and spin. You know, and it wasn't this. It was, you know, he
Who's getting it out?
yeah, and so we complemented each other very well. He was great at the net, and it was at the time when blocking was becoming more and more important for the game, and you know, he could dig, but he was better as a blocker.
Yeah.
So that, you know, freed me up in the back court to run around and do what I do. And we, you know, we figured out how to play together and how to use each of our strengths. And you know, at some point, you know, communication's so important, right? At some point, we didn't have to talk.
Right.
Because I knew what he was going to do
Right.
in just about every situation, and he knew what I was going to do.
Yeah.
You know, it was, you know, when you play long enough together with somebody, I mean, that's the beauty of it. You're not running into each other.
Right.
You know, you know where he's going to be, and you know where to go, and you know, yeah. And if beyond that, if you get in trouble, you know how to help the other person, or you know, if I get in trouble, I tell him. He knows exactly what to do, and you know. So yeah.
You mentioned like blocking was fairly new
Yep.
at that point, or in terms of like its importance in the game. Did you guys notice that your game and style together had to like evolve? Because you guys played together for so long, you must have had to kind of like evolve with the sport because it was transitioning like.
When we
Quickly.
started playing together, blocking was. I can't remember when we started. If you couldn't
Crossover?
penetrate
Right.
the plane yet, but it happened all pretty right around that time.
Yeah.
And you know, even if you went up to block and you couldn't penetrate, you still took an area away.
Yep.
You know, they still, if they wanted to hit, okay, I'll line up to hit, right? And if they wanted, you know, to avoid the block, then you're still running the ball down. So yeah, it didn't seem like we had to do anything special or different. It just was natural to do what we did, and you know, yeah.
We tell a lot of the younger players or players on like we really emphasize like stick with a partner because all these small things that you're talking about like knowing where each other are going to go in those like quick instinctual moments where you can't communicate. Yeah. But like, a lot of people are like, oh, we lost 2 in a row, we're out.
Yeah.
Next partner, we didn't work out.
Yeah.
Must have been that guy's fault.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
you have to have some element of success to stay with somebody.
That's true. Yeah.
You know,
That's a good point.
and sometimes you can get better as a team and find that success if you stay with that person. Right. You know, but not that, you know, it happens all the time. But when Karch and I played together, the first time we played, we won. You know, and you're okay. This works.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And the same thing with Randy. We
Totally.
won, so that worked. You know, it doesn't happen for everybody, but I've seen it happen with other teams too, where, you know, accidentally teams come together and they normally don't play together, and then all of a sudden they have a, you know, tremendous success, and it's like, oh Jesus,
Right.
I wonder why we didn't do this before, and you know,
Right.
yeah. So
That's true.
Hey, it's great if they can play with all kinds of different people. That way they learn personalities, they learn how to play, you know, around different, you know, it's a good exercise, particularly when they're younger.
Right. That's
Yeah.
true.
So staying together is important, but for kids, I would say change partners every week.
That's a good point.
You know, just
You learn all the different personalities.
yeah, and figure out how to play a certain style of game with certain people.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the next person you play with, you have to learn all over again.
Right.
It's okay. They're learning. I mean, you know, when are the really critical and important times, you know, for a team, you know, or a player, an individual player, you know, when they're getting recruited to college, it helps to have a partner that you're good with. You can compete at a high level, and so more coaches will see you because you're going further in the tournament. That's all important, you know. And then, you know, when you're when you're making money.
When you're pro, yeah, exactly. I think we think about the qualifier players a lot. They seem to bounce around, but I mean that's the point, right? They're trying to get to the money.
Yeah, they're trying to get into the main draw.
Right.
You know, once they do that, then okay, I got to this
Find
point.
your guy.
Now it's a whole nother game once you get to the main draw. Right? It almost seems like, at least the last year or two, it's harder to get into the main draw than it is to win a couple games in the main draw.
Yeah, that's could be fair.
You know, you know, maybe not your first game because you're playing the top seed.
Right.
But once you drop into the losers bracket, you're playing against other guys that maybe got there 2 years ago or 3 years ago and have been hanging out down there, right?
Right.
At the lower end of the AVP, and so if you can get through everybody fighting in the qualifier into the main draw, you know, then you
Plus
know
now you're warm.
Yeah,
right?
you have a
That
chance.
qualifier team.
Yeah, hopefully you're warm and
you're
you're not
tested.
done.
By the end of the next day, eventually you're done. But yeah,
I mean, done meaning you got enough juice left to play.
Yeah.
right.
Because if you play 4 matches in a day, and if you're not in good shape, and they're 3-game matches, you're you know, it takes its toll
Well,
because you don't train that way.
Right. Yeah. When we listen to your guys' stories, you sound like a total wimp if you can't play after 4 matches.
Yeah.
I don't think I've played 4 matches since I've been pro. Maybe like twice or once or twice.
Especially like with the pace that the World Tour plays now. I mean, when we were in China, we played 1 match a day.
So wild.
AVP, if you stay in the winners bracket, it's like 2 matches, 1 match, 2 matches.
Yeah.
And you won the tournament.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
A little different.
It's nice though. I
Yeah,
love those buys in the
Yeah.
winners bracket.
It's interesting when we were playing in the 2-day tournaments. If I won the tournament, I'd take Monday off. If I didn't win, I was going hard on Monday, all the way through.
I like that.
Well, we were winning quite a bit, so
Yeah. So Mondays were off.
and I'd feel bad sometimes if it was an easy win, and what's easy, but if I didn't feel like I was totally torched, I would go out and do something Monday anyway. Yeah.
That's so crazy. Because, like, nowadays, I feel like we're almost trained to think, like, don't overdo it. Like, everyone says that, whether it's a trainer or weight coach or anyone.
And what that means is don't overdo what you're not used to.
That's something that I've been pondering lately. Because your body will adapt to anything you give it, right?
Exactly right.
And I used to play as a kid, like 5 match, whatever, play all day.
Yeah.
Granted, I know it changed from when you're a kid, but and I hear your guys' stories. I'm like, there's no way that these guys are just like different human beings than me. We just train ourselves.
Well,
and we're weightlifting maybe more or in the training room. I don't know.
The weightlifting thing too. I'm a little bit skeptical about, because unless you've got a specific injury that you're working on, right? But to go in and try and get strong, if it isn't really, really specific to what you're going to do out on the beach,
Right.
then you're opening yourself up for a different kind of an injury. You know, because certain muscles are strong, and if you're using them in a different way when you're playing, then there's a chance for something to go. You know, and you know, I didn't lift ever, but I would train hard in the sand.
Yeah.
I would do jumps. You know, I would do one-legged jumps. I would do, you know, what I call speed skating. You know.
Yeah.
I'd do back and forth. You know, 3 steps, boom, 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 boom. And then, you know, approach jumps and standing jumps. So I would do a series of all that stuff. That's everything I would do in a game.
Playing with a weight vest, that's...
Well, that was early on, yeah.
Right.
That's when we didn't have much time, and we only had 4 hours to play.
Nobody even practices for 4 hours for their main practice
But that
nowadays.
was after we went through a Doug Beal trying to kill us indoor practice.
How does the body feel today?
Okay, I had 6 surgeries on this knee.
Okay.
But it still works. It's all right. You know, this knee, nothing happened to it. I mean, you know, there's
Nothing to be
little
scared of.
things.
Yeah.
You know, and particularly when you don't do things regularly, you feel it. But
Yeah.
okay, I mean, the shoulder's kind of okay.
Yeah. Kind of okay.
But
What more
you know,
do you need?
I had some problems with my arm. You know, when I was playing, and
Yeah.
you know, kind of bizarre stuff. I had an elbow problem. It felt like I was getting stabbed in the back of the elbow every time my elbow locked out. So
Oh,
when I
yeah.
passed the ball and when I hit the ball, and I went to doctors, and they go, okay, looks like you may have a spur. You know, we can do surgery. It might not be better. You may lose some mobility. And I'm
Right.
just going. And then finally, somebody turned me on to this guy, kind of almost reluctantly, because he was kind of a voodoo guy.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he goes, "Oh, it's your right shoulder, right?" I go, "Well, yeah, it's my elbow, and now my shoulder kind of hurts too." He goes, "Okay." He goes, "Come here." He grabbed my arm. He took my wrist. He goes, "It's not your elbow. It's not your shoulder. It's your wrist." I go, "I don't feel anything." He goes, "Move your wrist." And I moved this one, and it stopped, right? And this one went further. And he goes, "You did something when you were younger. You know, you fell. You did something, and it tweaked, you know, one of the bones, and your body compensated, and eventually it affected your elbow, and eventually it affected your shoulder. We're going to fix it." He injects something in there to numb it. He takes my hand, has another guy take my arm, and he goes, "Just relax," and goes, bang, and just does, and the thing goes, you know, this loud noise, and he goes, "Now look at the movement." Oh shit! Your elbow and shoulder problem, and I had it for a few years. I couldn't practice. I would just jump. I would do jumps for training, and I couldn't play. And then when I'd play, I would, you know, I was taking Meclamin, I was taking Indocin, and then my stomach was bleeding internally, and then I started taking just straight aspirin before every game. All this stuff before I said, okay, finally, I guess I'm going to retire. And then this guy goes, bang. He goes, you'll be better in a month. After years and wanting to retire and get surgery and everything else. And
it worked?
So it worked. So it got better. But he also injected, after the fact, this stuff called proliferant. You've heard of proliferant, right?
No.
Well, it's supposed to kind of strengthen your ligaments and tendons. It creates a scar tissue over it. But he injected it into my capsule, and it broke through the capsule and leaked out onto the top of my hand. So it locked all these tendons so they couldn't move, right? So my hand swelled up like this. So I played a whole season with my hand taped in this like this. And if you look back at old pictures, you can see it's freaking swollen like this and taped up, but got through it. You know, and my shoulder worked after that. Never had you know, problems after
What
that.
season was that?
Oh Jesus!
Was that before or after '96?
Before.
Okay.
Oh, before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then I retired again in '94 because my knee was screwed. And there was something going on, and you know, finally went in, and I said, you know, this is it. I'm done.
Yeah.
Let's just fix it, and I'll be done. Because I was in '94, I was 37, right? So it's, you know, It's kind of the right time,
Right.
right? Maybe maybe after the right time. But cut it open. There was a tear in my quad tendon where it attached to my patella. So he cut out the bad tissue, and I was watching the surgery. He cut out the bad tissue, drilled a hole in my kneecap, pulled it back, sewed it all up.
You just watched all of it.
Yeah. Well, the first of my 6, I didn't watch, and I wanted to see after that. And so I said, "Can you give me a spinal so I can watch?" Yeah, absolutely.
Just a nerve block? Is that what that is?
Yeah, but
from the spine.
Yeah, like what women get when they, when they have a baby.
Oh yeah, epidural kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So he fixed it, and then as I'm recuperating, I thought to myself, well, if he fixed it, and that's what was bugging me, why can't I continue to play?
Right.
So I said, screw it. I'm going to go out, and when it gets better, I'm going to start to train and then try and qualify for the '96 Olympics. And,
I mean, you're
did.
getting the sport in. You might as well play in it.
Yeah, and did.
You guys went the
and this is
the road less
Rand.
traveled by.
Well, Randy had already, because my knee was kind of bugged me. I was, wasn't as good.
Right.
Still, I was okay. He wasn't as good. He decided to go his own way. And then when I came back, he was kind of on his own way. He was playing with Adam, I think, at the time. And they were doing all right. I don't think they were killing anybody, but they were doing all right. And then I had to find a partner. It's a whole nother story.
I love that story, how you found Carl Henkel.
Yeah. And so just before the qualifying started in '95, the beginning of '95, my wife was pregnant with Hagen. Mm-hmm. And the tournament, I had to leave on a Monday to get to, I think, Spain for the first tournament, and Ricky Ludes and I were going to go play. And it was before cell phones, of course. and I get home like at 4 a.m, and I check my messages before I get on the flight, and Ricky had called, left a message, "I can't go, the AVP won't let me go." So I said, okay, great. And I tried to figure out what I was going to do at that point. And I started calling the guys, the 4-man guys. And Carl was one of my first calls. And he got back to me pretty quickly. He goes, "What's up?" I go, "Would you like to play and try and qualify for the Olympics?" And he said, "Well, I don't know what, how much time do I have to think about it?" I go, "You got to, I don't know, 10 seconds, because somebody else would be calling back, pretty soon anyway."
Right.
He goes, "Yeah, I'm in." I go, "Okay, get a ticket to Spain. Let's go." And boom, we went. And we were at that time for the '96 Olympics. If a country had first of all, we get one automatic berth because we were the host country. But we had the ability, like every other country, to get 2 teams, other teams.
2 more.
Yeah. So this is
right.
just in '96. Just in '96.
An Olympian.
So
should have kept that rule. I was the alternate last time.
So if you had a team finishing in the top 8 and a second one in the top 24, you could have 2 teams. Mm-hmm. So we finished, I forget what it was, maybe 4th in the world at the time, and Bersinio and Williams finished 17th or something. So we had 2 positions. The AVP this is just for this Olympics, there was all kinds of bickering going back and forth, the FIVB. So the FIVB said, okay, fine, your number 1 team will be your automatic berth for the country. And the AVP had nothing to do with the USAV. They weren't even talking with each other. And however the USA wants to deal with the other 2 positions, because you've earned them, you go for it. So they figured out a way to do it, and they had an event, and that's how Karchin Kent and Mike ended up qualifying through that event. And then everything changed after that.
Did you watch the trial in
No.
Baltimore?
I don't, no, because Randy sprained his ankle in a warm-up, and I didn't see it. I heard about it later.
Yeah.
Randy and
Adam, yeah.
That's like...
And they had a good shot to qualify.
Right,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Was that against...
I don't know who they were playing
Dodd
against.
In Whitmarsh?
Not sure who they were playing against. I wasn't there. That's yeah.
How many teams were on the world tour at that time?
I don't know. There's way more today.
No, but like
in more
American
countries.
teams, how many teams actually went over? Because then
It was probably those two teams and maybe one or two sporadically, but nobody that was competing at none of the top AVP guys. None of them.
But then a lot of those guys got a shot through the trials.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
I'm not sure how many teams were in the trial. If it was 8 or 12 or 16,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm sure they limited it, to a certain number.
Yeah.
And it was all about the AVP ranking and everything else. If you made it to the trial, and then how they,
Right.
qualify.
I always think about that now because like it seems to me like for sure the best way to earn a position and to figure out who's the best team to go would be go prove yourself on the world tour.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's like we could have a lot of value for our sport if we have the qualifier, right? So it's like, which do we
Well,
want?
it's up to the national governing body to decide.
USA.
Yeah.
Right.
So they could very easily say the top-ranked American team on the world tour will go automatically, and the second team will. And I proposed that several times.
Right, yeah.
Several times, but they, for whatever reason, they didn't want to make the hard decision and say, okay, well, the second position will be, you have to have played in a certain number of international events.
Right.
You have to get to a certain level, and then you can play for that second position in a national qualifier.
Right.
It seemed to make the most sense.
You get best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your top team is locked.
Yeah.
And then...
Yeah, your best team that competes best internationally is going to go represent you.
Yeah.
Your second team has to be a team that has competed internationally. It should be.
Right.
Because then you know how they play, like you said.
Right.
And then, a certain number of teams and let them fight it out.
Yeah.
And great for the U.S., great for U.S. television, fans, everything.
Yeah.
It would make complete sense.
I agree. I wonder what's holding it back. We were saying...
Decision makers.
Right. I think we were talking about it with Dodd a little bit, and we were saying, like, how the AVP has the Gold Series.
Mm-hmm.
They have their 3 big events. Just make it the combination of those 3 events.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Well,
and then it's not one event, too.
Well,
like if you get injured.
Yeah, exactly. And the other... Well... Where they run into a problem is if they wait too long to make the decision. If you make the decision right after the Olympics for the next Olympics, nobody can argue.
Right, totally.
Who's going to argue? Well, yeah, but I think I'm going to be second, so
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
So we had it almost right the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, the problem right now there's no collaboration between the domestic tour and USA Volleyball.
Yeah.
It's complete separation,
Yeah.
which is where we started.
But
right?
And that's ridiculous too. The USAV can control that if they really wanted to and make some tough decisions.
Mm-hmm.
The decision is if you want to play internationally and represent the U.S. in international events and the Olympic Games, you must compete in a certain number of events that we sanction, whether we put it on ourselves or whether we sanction AVP or 1440 or whoever. That way it forces the AVP to talk to them and go, okay, we'll play by your rules.
Right.
And we'll identify a certain number of events that would, rank teams and the top teams would be able to represent the United States internationally. To me, it's really simple. I don't understand why they won't pull the trigger.
Do you think that the domestic tour has, to me it makes, for sure, I would think so, but does the domestic tour have a lot of value for USA Volleyball? You'd think it would.
Absolutely. Well, everyone...
I just feel like it seems like the way they're doing things...
Could it have more value?
They don't think it's valuable.
Could it have more value than the perceived value today? Absolutely. There is a perceived value for, it depends who you look at. Maybe the players, no. But generally speaking, you see the AVP, and then you see those same players playing internationally. I mean, if you know how it works in the United States, the team has to go through the USAV to play internationally,
Right.
and then you think, okay, USAV's playing a big role.
Right.
But they're not, and they could. They could control the sport 100%. 100%.
And the fact that they don't means that they're essentially, because the World Tour is pulling us away from the domestic tour right now. But if USA Volleyball took that power and said, you don't have to go play in these events, we're going to help you do it domestically, then we don't have to go to these events we don't want to play in, these 4 stars with crap money. And we can choose which AVPs we want to play and then go play in the real big ones.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, other AVP teams can choose if they want to go play in these smaller level events.
Yeah. I mean, they already are. There's some teams
nice.
going and playing in the lower level, but
Yeah,
really,
for sure.
but even lower level teams.
Right. I just hate how we have to go to a lot of events that we don't want to go to.
Yeah, that
we don't want to be here,
Yeah.
but we're just chasing these points.
Yeah.
Which is like to fly across the
Well-
world for that when you have an event in Hermosa Beach,
Well,
right here.
Okay, well, that's
tough.
part of the problem is scheduling too, obviously.
Well, from what I've heard, it's AVP stopped trying to move their schedule around because FIVB a few times moved their schedule on top of theirs.
They don't do that intentionally.
So they don't talk. Or
No, they don't. When you're talking about one promoter who has one event
right.
in his country, and he's picking an iconic spot to have his event, and he's dealing with the city and everything. You know, they don't have the option to go one week or 2 weeks forward or backwards.
Totally.
You know, they're putting on the event on the best possible weekend they have for their one event that's going to cost them $2 to $3 million, maybe more.
Right.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're going, well, let's see if we can screw the AVP.
Right, totally.
That's not what happens.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Right. No, I totally believe that.
Yeah.
It's just tough. It's like a problem that seems like it needs to be figured out.
Yeah.
Like that needs to be a priority.
Well, you know, there's enough American teams to always send teams to all the international events and still keep good teams here in the U.S.
Right. But not if the Olympic points are on the line, which is 2 years out of every quad.
Yeah, yeah. But remember how many teams can go. And that's the other thing that's wild is why we're even allowing teams to go play in qualifiers. Why aren't they doing that here?
Right. That's another
I mean, how
question.
stupid. You're flying across the world to play one game, maybe.
Right.
One game. You lose, you're done. You win, you go to the main draw.
Yeah. I don't know why they do that either. Even if you're the players, you
quota.
just hire a ref and say, we'll just go down the
Yeah,
beach by
absolutely.
ourselves.
Or maybe our national governing body can play a role in that.
They've done that. Like
I know they've had little
on and
events.
off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They go to Annenberg or they go to
But
wherever.
I wonder what is the decision that makes it like, oh, this qualifier is going to be over there versus this qualifier. It's been in Manhattan Beach
some
lately.
of it.
Yeah.
Some of it was based on the FIVB schedule. So like for the 4 China events, for example, like they're not going to have a country quota in the U.S. in the middle of that. Like they're going to say, oh, fly back home to the U.S. have your country quota.
Yep. All right.
Oh, that's a good
So
point. Yep.
they've
Yeah.
had.
But
they've
they
kinda
can
picked
group
the pops
events.
and
They can
times.
group events and have a qualifier for 2 or 3 events or
Right.
4 maybe, I don't know. And say, hey, everybody knows if they know in advance and they know what's going on, and boom.
Beginning of the year.
Yeah, and the USAV again, if they were willing to make hard decisions, they could say, we're not entering you into a qualifier. You must qualify here.
That makes sense.
If I were a player though, and like,
Well, a country quota, right? Because you'd have
Yeah,
to play
country
the
quota.
qualifier, yeah.
Country quota. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
if I
yeah.
were a player though, and you know I had a country quota in Xinjiang, like all right, I'll cover the refs.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
We're
say.
playing here.
Yeah.
Like I'm not going there for country quota.
Yeah.
One of us is gonna lose the country quota,
Yeah.
and then the other one's got to get through the qualifier just to get our flight money back.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these are the best teams in the world.
Yeah.
Like, let's just pay for it. Loser pays for the rest.
Yeah, exactly.
And you still save
Or-
probably
or-
500,
wait.
like $600 on it.
Yeah.
Or winner pays for the ref.
Or winner. There you go. Yeah. But they still got to go to the qualifier. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And the other thing that's tough that we've worked on for years at the FIVB, and I don't know where they are right now, but there's too many teams playing on the world tour from all over the world that have done okay, but they can't be knocked out of the frickin' main draw. They should they should protect maybe their top 8 in the main draw, or maybe, a few more, top 12, and then let everyone else fight to get into the main draw, in a qualifier. Mm-hmm. Single elimination, boom. And that way, you're going to see an up and down much more often than now, where if you start from scratch, it's very difficult to get into a main draw.
Yeah.
Right?
I see that more. I see it more on the AVP, I think, than the FIVB, where you get AVP guys just taking a 13, a 9, sitting on points from like 2 years ago. But the FIVB was kind of wild because you had the Latvian #1 team was in the qualifier for half the year. They got
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so it's
doesn't make any sense. Kerry Walsh in the qualifier. How much sense does that make? And she should get wild cards anyway. But there should be an easier rotation system of players coming in, and a new team should be able to get into the main draw if they're good enough quickly. They can go through the qualifier, get to the main draw, win the tournament, and be in the qualifier for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
What about the system that the WSL, the World Surf League, has, where they have the championship tour and the qualifying tour?
Yeah.
Top 4 teams or so from the qualifying series that year goes to the championship tour.
For the whole year?
For the whole year. And the bottom 4, however many, go to the qualifying
How about
series.
for every event?
Ooh.
Protect the top 8 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Have everyone else qualify.
So if you...
That's true.
So like 16 team draw, like if you go Toon Barbecue, then you're qualified for the next one?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
And the top quality teams in.
But I
That's interesting.
I proposed something different, and I said play single elimination in the main draw and the qualifier, and then you can have a lot more teams in the main draw, and you can have a lot more fluctuation too. It might be better for teams to have an opportunity to play in more events on the world, in the main draw, whatever. Mm-hmm. But the rest of the world doesn't frickin' know or care. If you're looking at our sport in a way to, build our sport, nobody cares that this team was able to play 2 or 3 games in that event. Nobody cares. Nobody. Mm-hmm. Except the players.
Right. Yeah.
But hey, if you're good enough, you'll be there. If you're not, you're going to be there. Mm-hmm. So I've each quadrennial I come up with my proposals.
New ideas, yeah.
Yeah, and
do you get to voice these ideas? Because I know you're...
No, I send them directly to the president and to They see it.
They see it.
But it's those hard decisions,
Right.
Changing something where all the players and going crazy, and they can do it. Well, what are the players going to do?
Well, the
all
players
get
are
together.
kind of going crazy right now.
Now, for what?
Just on the world tour right now, the way that just the star system, I think, at the top is you can't really make a great living.
Yeah.
With 3 5-stars,
Yeah.
And then the 4-stars, like you get a bronze, you get $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty difficult in a stacked 4-star.
Yeah. What's first place in a 4-star?
20. Which is like the average AVP now. So now the AVP tour has better money for us. It legitimately does.
For sure.
And now, but we're still having to go to the world tour because we want this Olympic dream.
Yep.
When really we want to be making more money on the AVP and playing for our home country and fans. And so it's an interesting spot. But from what I understand, the FIVB is kind of aware of it. I know there's a players union that was made on the world tour.
It's never worked.
Well, yeah.
Because players don't communicate.
Yeah, it's not.
Unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have to have regular communication, and they have to be communicating with the FIVB. And I say we because when I was there, we tried it all the time. And it would get to the point where if they didn't like something, they waited till the last minute and they created a big problem.
Right. When it was too late to change
Yeah,
or fix.
the changes have to come at the beginning of the quadrennial.
Totally.
Because if you change something a year or 2 years in, all the players are going,
Yeah. Totally.
you know,
Totally.
which I think if you're making a change that's going to make the sport better, then you should be able to do it at any time.
Right.
But that's just me.
Yeah.
Totally.
How is it that you've remained so passionate about this game for so long? Because you grew up playing, and you were so involved as a player, and then obviously like when you were playing, you were also kind of helping the FIVB come along, and you helped.
Help the AVP,
and you've done so much.
It wasn't anything I said, oh, I'm going to do this.
Right.
I came at a time. I mean, you have to love the sport first, and I played because I love the sport. There's no money, but we wanted to go out and train and play because it was cool. It was great. It was awesome. It was competitive and everything else.
Great parties.
It was just a fringe benefit,
Yeah, right.
They're always better if you won, though.
Right, totally.
Although, when we were traveling all over here in the U.S., and the guys that had the most fun are the guys who lost out in the quarterfinals on Saturday.
Right, yeah. The player party.
Yeah, on Saturday night. Sunday, yeah. It was a little different, but still, winning was good.
Right. Totally.
It took care of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But how does that happen? It happened. Like timing, and the sport became professional. If you asked me in college, was I going to make a living at beach volleyball? There's no chance.
Right.
No chance at all. Was it going to be an Olympic sport? No way. No chance. We hadn't even played internationally yet.
Right.
As an American player at that time, you didn't know what it took to become an Olympic sport anyway. You think that somebody says, okay, that's going to be an Olympic sport. We had no idea. You had to have events around the world, and you had to have a bunch of countries participating. It had to be accessible to almost anybody, which our sport was perfect, because anybody could play.
Right.
And indoor volleyball was already big, but it was very big, but it was hard for a country to start indoor volleyball. You needed an indoor facility, you needed 12 players, you needed all this stuff.
Right.
On the beach, you needed 2 coconut trees and a net and 2 play, And any country could participate. That was a huge bonus.
Do you think that's why we're seeing so many countries now that are so good at beach, because you only need 2?
Absolutely.
You just got your main powers.
Countries that never would have participated in an Olympic
Like
Games.
Norway?
Yeah, well, Norway and Sweden and so many other countries up there that now have all the indoor facilities and parts. Well, just look at our country's a good example of it was only Southern California.
Right.
And then it was, Florida, and then different places, and then it was the whole country because of indoor facilities.
Right.
Indoor sand. And it's, Africa. Any country can field a team. And now with the way the qualification system works, you have the continents each have a position. So you have a better opportunity within Africa to qualify a team.
Yeah.
And same for Asia, and same, So it's really, really a good sport for more countries to be involved in.
Yeah.
Because it's cheap, and you don't need a ton of athletes.
Right.
Totally. Yeah, there's a few countries who qualify, like Mexico. Like they have one team.
Yeah.
Chile's got one team.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, but those are quality.
One
Norway
team.
I mean, they basically have one team that's in the main draw.
Those damn kids.
And they're the
They've
best
been playing
team in the world.
Yeah, but it was because what we did, and how
totally.
it grew in Norway, and these kids now they're in school to play volleyball, right?
Volleyball school, yeah.
Yeah, and they're freaking
They
really.
grew up watching film.
They're good athletes. They have to be good athletes to start. They apparently love the game.
Mm-hmm.
They're students of the game.
Totally.
They knew who me and Randy were. I mean,
yeah.
it was really neat to see that, and they're good kids too.
Yeah.
Really good kids. They just happen to be awesome volleyball players too.
Yeah.
Punks.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it fun to go ahead?
Yeah, I was gonna say anyone can be beat.
I agree.
True.
I was like 2 swings away from it this year.
Is it fun when you and Randy kind of commentate together and, kind of running into people that like watched you and Randy play either growing up or just look to you guys as like that's who I want to play like? Because I'm sure that has happened.
You mean when we're at the beach at an event?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
what happens a lot is people who watched us play, they would come up and they go, God, it was so awesome when you guys played.
Yeah.
That's really neat. That makes you feel really good that you had an impression on people, when they were watching you when you were playing in your heyday. It's cool. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good feeling. Yeah.
It was fun when me and Hagen played in Chicago. The night before, he was watching film, and I was like, "Who are you watching?" He just said, "My dad." He's like, I just watch my dad all the time."
No way.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool.
And it's funny. I'm sure he saw things on the film that I don't, or I wouldn't teach him. Because everybody's different. You play a certain way based on a lot of different things, and I continued to learn throughout my whole career, and based on all of that knowledge is what I try to teach him. Or when I was there, I would tell you things that wouldn't necessarily happen, back in '85, or '87, but throughout all the years. But there's so many things that Randy and I figured out, and I learned from Ron Von Hagen. I learned a lot from him. That just the very basics of what you need to do to eliminate mistakes, because that's the key. If you don't make mistakes, it's very hard to lose. So I all the knowledge that I have is what I try to impart to him, and it's not always exactly what I did along the way.
Right.
It's what I learned along the way. But yeah. So I don't know what he was looking at.
I think we were watching. I know that I watched your Olympic match, you and Carl against Karch and Kent quite a bit. That's one of, I think, the best matches of all time.
Yeah, I remember it. I remember a lot of it.
I bet. It was a wild one. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but
I have. I know I've seen highlights from it. I'd love to sit down and watch it. I told Travis I need him to get me out and watch more films.
just watching YouTube and
I just don't watch enough.
Yeah.
I think you can learn so much. I mean, you need to play is more important.
I mean,
Actually, after this conversation, I'm like, damn, I think I need to train like 7 days a week, double days. Yeah.
If I had a choice,
Jose.
I wouldn't be watching video. I mean, you can learn. I don't doubt it from watching particularly other teams, figuring out tendencies. But I always knew that what somebody does against another team, they're not going to necessarily do against you.
Right.
There's certain things that they'll always do, but you can't rely upon, we're going to play him this way because I saw him do this.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out, and that was what was good about Sideout ball, is you could play with somebody, and figure out what they were doing, and you could take a little time to do that.
Right.
You can't do that now. You've got to figure out where the weakness is early on, and you got to be able to make a switch very quickly.
Yeah.
Something's not working in 2 or 3 tries, you got to go to something else.
Yeah, exactly.
And or even right away
That
after
could be
one
why,
try.
like when you were talking about the short serve earlier, I was like, gosh, maybe I should do that more. And I'm like, but then when you short serve someone and they bounce 1 or 2, then it's like, let's get away from this.
Yeah.
Well, that's your instinct.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, where do most people hit? They don't hit down the line. They hit cross guard. Most of the time, most people, right?
Right.
You go up your first play and you reach into the cross court and they bounce the line.
Right.
The rest of the game, that's the one you're thinking about.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I don't want that to happen again. And it's like burned on the angle, right? It's just,
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've kept you here for a while,
Yeah.
and it's It's getting pretty late. So
I thought we were just starting. There's a
Oh,
lot.
perfect.
There's a lot.
There's a lot more. We can have you back in.
Yeah,
As
Sure.
much as we want.
We need to do episode 2 for sure.
Anytime.
Yeah, we do have a new final question for our guests. Before we get to that, like, where could people reach you? Or I know that you do a lot of camps and stuff. So if, say we have some adult listeners who want to get their kids over to you, where could they find you?
Beachvolleyballcamps.com or sinjinvolleyball.com. And then everything I'm doing with licensing is at kingofthebeach.com.
Got it. Are you guys doing a snow event this year?
Not sure. I've spoken to the FIVB. They want more snow events. They'd love to have a presence here in the U.S. We had the one, and it's funding. You got to have somebody put up some money to really make it good. Huh?
In Mammoth, I think.
Where were you?
I haven't gotten invited to any of these snow events. That sounds
Try
great.
to get to play the fun stuff.
I'm also not good in cold. Like, my hands go numb right away. But I'd love to play in that one day. For sure.
I'll have to give you some video to attach to your thing.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was right outside. Do you know Mammoth?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The deck where you sit looking up the hill. It was right there.
That's so cool.
I feel like I've seen them set up like a really bad net there just for the people like drinking and.
Yeah, I don't know if they did that, but we set up, and we had a few teams playing. It was part of a charity event, and then we had a little competition. But it was a yearly charity event that Mammoth puts on, and some of the ski racers came out and played, and we had the cat come down and light the court at night.
That's
with their lights. It was awesome.
That's great.
And it's such a beautiful setting. The gondolas going overhead, and the lifts are going up, and people are skiing down. It was really neat.
That is really.
Yeah, it was an ideal location. Yeah, it was great. I mean, for that.
And it's close to Southern California,
Yeah.
You put that on a few more times and you could get a crowd to drive up there.
And Mammoth is all about it. That part of the equation is good. They're more than willing to work with us and have an event. It's just you need a little more than that to attract players. And Mammoth will help with hotels too, because they have the hotel right there. So there's a lot of things that are in place. Just need a little bit more to make it happen.
You need the SANDCAST crew.
That's right.
Teamed up with the McKibben Bros.
Yeah.
Taking on the world.
Will be dancing.
Yeah.
You talked to the McKibbens
all the entertainers
about Cutter,
yes.
about the 4-man.
Yeah, they all loved it.
They had a blast.
And the girls too.
Yeah.
We had some of the girls on actually.
Yeah, they had a slow start. The guys did.
Yeah, they were trying to figure out their.
They barely made it out.
Well, I told them from the very start what to do.
Because you probably played a fair amount of 4-man.
No,
I guess.
No, we never had time. We barely played in the 6-man.
Okay.
Back when, because we were, at one point we had over 20 dates. We were running around the country.
Right.
And just because the Manhattan 6-man was happening, Miller Beer didn't care. We were in Chicago or we were in, Texas somewhere. We were somewhere. So we didn't get to play in a lot of the fun events, for years and years. But I don't know if you've seen the picture. The one 6-man team that we had was me and Randy Havendodd, and then we had a few other people.
Still, jeez.
So the 4 of us, and it was it was a lot of fun.
The 4 or 6 best players of your generation.
Yeah. That was good.
Yeah. But the final question that we do have for our guests is, what is your why in beach volleyball?
What do you mean?
Like, why are you so passionate about the game? Like, why do you love it? Why have you been in it for so long?
Well, growing up, if I grew up in St. Louis, where my parents were from, and there were 7 kids in my family, and so at that time, if I was in another part of the country, I would have played maybe baseball or maybe another sport. Never would have even seen volleyball.
Right.
A lot of people never saw it until we went across the country.
Yeah.
In the 80s. But growing up here in Southern California, my dad would take all 7 of us, to the beach and throw us out into the sand. And it just happened to be Sorrento Beach, where the top players at the time, Von Hagen, Lang, Selznick back and forth, Mingus, Lee, Shamalis, all these guys, that's where they played. So at that period of time, and even through my generation, the vast majority of all the Opens won were from Santa Monica.
Yeah.
All the guys from Santa Monica. And so obviously that didn't mean anything to me when I was this big,
right.
But I would be there watching, and everyone would crowd around the courts when these guys would play. I would run after the ball and throw it back to them. And in high school, I played indoor at Loyola High School. Went away from the beach because I was busy with school and, starting to play indoors. And then the summer after my senior year in high school, Al Skates, he recruited me during my senior year, and he asked me if I wanted a job down at the beach club in Santa Monica. And I said, absolutely, So I went down there and I taught volleyball and paddle tennis. And on my days off, I would play beach volleyball for the first time kind of competitively with other people who could play. And got good pretty quickly. Went back to Sorrento on my days off, Monday and Tuesday, and played against Von Hagen and Shamalis and the other really, really good guys. And here I am, an 18-year-old kid who just started playing, but I could compete with them. And they all said, well, why aren't you playing in the tournaments? I go, well, I have a job on the weekends. I can't do that. I made sure after that year that I didn't have a job on the weekends, and I started playing that next year after my freshman year at UCLA, every summer for 25 years, on the beach.
Yeah.
So growing up at the beach, seeing all the top players, having that kind of impression on you as a kid, kind of, that leaves a big impression.
Yeah.
And then playing, and it's interesting. I love indoor volleyball. I loved it playing, competing, and everything else. But there's something about beach volleyball that there's a freedom of expression, basically. No one's telling you what to do.
Right.
You're figuring it out on your own. You're trying, and you're being very creative as an individual playing, even though you're getting all your tips and everything by watching everybody else. You're seeing what works for you, and you're trying it. If it works, you continue to develop as a player, and that's all about you. At that time, obviously, coaches help everybody now, but still, each player is an individual in how they play, and that part of it, that individuality of it, was kind of a big deal for me at that age, at the 18, 19, 20, and then carried through for the rest of my career.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question, but that gives you a little history of where I started, where I came from, and and then it went from there.
Yeah. Well, you've just wanted to acknowledge the impact that you've had on the game. I mean, just kind of the beach world as we know it, kind of started with you guys, and I mean, you especially, and Randy, taking the chances and getting fined $70,000 to go play overseas. So we appreciate you and the impact you've had on it.
And happy to come back, and we've just scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah,
there's tons more.
For sure. Love it. We'll have you back on. Well, I guess it's now 2020, so we'll have you back on a little bit later. Yeah. In 2020.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on.
All right,
Sinjin.
thank you.
Happy New Year's, everybody. Shoots. Crack a Kona brew.